Hey guys, welcome back to my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches, and today we're going to be working on the Fat Quarter Shop's Sew Sampler November box. This is a pattern that they just came out with. I cannot wait to share it with you guys. It's been so much fun and it comes together so quickly and easily. Okay, so today we're going to be sewing the Perennials pattern that came out with Fat Quarter Shop Sew Sampler. This is a great pattern. They gave us tons of fabric. I had fabric left over. The one thing I did kind of change up on the centers, they did give us a fat quarter of yellow. That's not enough to do all of your centers. So I had another fat quarter that was actually it was a fat eighth, that was kind of similar color and similar scale. And so I'm using that for 4 of my flower centers, and then all my other centers I made with the fat quarter that came in our kit this month. So let's jump on in and I'll show you what I did.
Okay, so here we go. I've got everything from our pattern cut out. The one difference I did was, instead of cutting 1,001 little squares of the leaf block, cut 2 1.5-inch strips of our white and 2 of our green. And okay guys, quick correction, you actually need 3 of the strips that are 1.5. Then on our green, I needed 2 sections that are just going to be 1 white, 1 green, 1 white, 1 green. And then I'm going to sew 1 section that is 1 green in the middle of 2 whites. So I hope that all makes sense. We're just going to go ahead and strip piece these together just like this. 1 skinny white, 1 skinny green on each section. And then we're going to have 1 with the green in the middle and then 1 white on each side. So once I get all of those sewn together, I'm going to go ahead and press them all towards the green, and then I will subcut them. So let's head over to the machine and we'll sew this one out. Okay, so it's totally 100% up to you. If you would rather cut all the little squares and sew them together, some people prefer that versus this longer fabric. But again, I pretty much always start, so I don't find that mine distort that much. And this kind of lets me roll through a little bit faster. But only if my machine's on. All right, just because I can kind of hear a slight difference in my machine, even though this isn't my normal maintenance time, I'm just going to put a couple drops in the 2 spots on the bottom here. And by a couple, I mean 1 in each hole. Just sounds a little bit off. The more you sew with your machine, the more you'll know. And when in doubt, 1 drop is probably a great idea. 10 drops is never a good one. So okay, so that was our 2 skinny pieces. Now we're going to do 2 of the green and white of our wider strips. These are the 2.5-inch strips. I even thought about making these scrappy, like leftover jelly rolls, but I didn't have the time for all that. Okay, we'll do another section of 2. And then the last one will be more like a Neapolitan. Not really, because it's not 3 different colors, but you know what I mean. Someone suggested to me after my last video that they drop that needle after they cut thread, and that keeps their thread from disappearing on them. And with this 60 weight, I've had that happen quite a lot. So I can't wait to see if it works for me. Needle down, needle up. Okay, so we're going to pull that one that we just sewed back through. So this is one of our wider strips. These are the 2.5-inch strips. I'm just going to fold it open kind of down the line so that it'll stay nice and open for me. And then I'm going to attach white to this other side. So this one's the only one that's going to have
a true alternating patterns. The other one is just one of each.
Okay, so now I'm just going to set all these seams and press, oops, cut them apart. And then press them all towards the green. And honestly, this is the way I roll. I fly by the seat of my pants. I hope they all nest. I'm pretty sure they will, but we'll see. I could be wrong. It's happened a lot, to be quite honest. Okay, and this one of 3 is going to be kind of funky, so I'm going to save that one for the end. All right, so we'll set our seams. And when you're working with really long strips like this, it is easy to distort them as you're pressing them. So do try to be delicate with your fabrics. And again, I do kind of always try to starch if I can. So I did starch these fabrics, and I am going to kind of roll them open with my finger first before I hit it with the iron, because I feel like if I just hit it straight with the iron, I distort it more. So it's totally up to you. You can also use, Lori Holt uses one of those rollers all the time. I like that. I just don't want to go to the other side of the room and get it. So there. But whenever you're working with a jelly roll or anything super narrow that's long like that, you just kind of have to be careful. I mean, we should be careful all the time anyway, right? I just kind of like to run my finger right along that thread just to give it a little nudge over to the correct side. Okay, guys, somehow I managed to not hit the record button. So I took all of my 2.5-inch pieces that were my 2.5-inch strips, and I cut them into sections like this. So there's 16 of these, and then there are 32 of the other 2.5 by 2.5s. And then for my 1.5 by 1.5s, I'm going to need 32 of them cut into 1.5-inch sections. So one of the shortcuts that I use to cut mine out quickly is I'm going to line this up with one edge of my, a line on my ruler. And then I really love this stripology ruler because once I get it placed, if I have my strip straight with the ruler underneath, and then I line up this ruler with an edge, I'm going to cut off this little bit of excess to make sure I've got 2 that are exactly the same. And then I'm just going to say, these are the 1.5. So I'm going to cut these at 1.5. So every 1.5 inches, there's a star on this ruler. So you're absolutely, like, if you've got the math, you've got the math. But if you just want to be easy, you can look for the stars. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So with this method, if you use these cuttings and instructions, and I will go ahead and put this in the description as well, the extra that you're going to have, I had this much left over, and that's really a difference in my width of fabric from those whites and the greens. That was me trimming up the edge. And then on these guys, I do have a little bit extra, but I will throw those into my scrap bins. I might even make them into 4 patches before. So we will head over to the machine and sew all of our 4 patches together, and then it's time to start assembling this little block. Okay, so these will be really easy to sew together. They nest, so the green being pressed always towards the green is going to make it nest. I like to try to have the seam down, so as it feeds through the machine, this is not likely to flip up. You can absolutely work with it, but it just makes life a little bit easier as you roll up onto this plate. You can see that as it's coming in and make sure that that seam is tucked in. So we're just going to chain piece all these together. And I have already gone ahead and sewn my 4 patches together. So because we pressed everything to the green, they nested really nicely, really easily. Now I'm going to take these over to the pressing station, and I'm just going to press all of these open because the back of this seam is getting a little bit bulky. So I will save you the boredom of that step and just get all of these pressed open. Okay, so now it's going to be time to build out kind of our block, if you will. We've got our green and white. Make sure you have it oriented correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate my whole stack over here. I don't even know if y'all can see that. I have a whole stack of all my 4 patches. They're all oriented the same way, and I'm going to keep them right here next to my board exactly the correct way. Then the next row is going to be, the rest of this row is there. And then this is going to be our center. And then the bottom is going to be the opposite. So your green's going to go on the outside, then you have your 3-piece, and then you've got your 4 patches with the green towards the outside. Okay, guys, so as you saw in the beginning, I actually did not have enough of these squares since I should have done the math from the get-go. So I ended up making a 3rd strip of these 1.5-inch sections, and I do have some left. I will probably go ahead and cut these and make these into 4 patches and put them on the back of the quilt or something. I haven't decided yet, but I will definitely hold on to those. So now I've got everything lined up. I've got my 4 patch, white, green, my 3 patch, green, white, and my 4 patch. So I'm going to connect these on these 2 sections, iron them, and get them back on this board. And so I will head over to the machine and just start connecting those 2. Okay, so I have all of my 4 patches here, and then my greens and whites. And actually, I'm going to spin these so that I can have my bigger piece on the bottom. But I still have this green towards the outside, so this was my upper corner. And all my greens are going to stay oriented that way. Which actually is going to be exactly like the bottom row, so then these will be totally interchangeable. So I'm going to line those up and just start sending them through. That's not right. Yep, they rotated on me. Okay, so that's my entire top rows, and I will go press all of these out. What I am going to do is, because the middle row is going to be pressed towards the middle, I'm going to press these towards the outside, which is towards my 4 patch, which is a little unusual, but that's what I'm going to do to just make my seams nest and be easy. So that's the top row, and it turns out the bottom row is going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to do it at the same time. Oh, I'm out of bobbin thread again. I was using up my leftovers. So right before I started this project, I did a really thorough clean out of my whole bobbin area. I have been changing to different colors a lot lately. Usually with cotton, I want to do every 5th bobbin, complete clean out and change my needle and all of that. With this 60 glide, the bobbin lasts so much longer that I really can't go 5 bobbins. I need to go like 2 or 3, not because of the clean out, but to change the needle. Like your needle has had enough action that it needs to be moved along. So right before I started this project, I did switch that out. And do a thorough cleaning, all the maintenance that we love doing. Okay, so now we'll head over to the pressing station. And again, contrary to normal, I'm going to actually press towards the 4 patch on both of these rows. And then I will meet you back at the design wall. Design board, design something. So now we have our top row, whoops, our top row, our middle row, and our bottom row sewn together. And that was really very, very few steps. So I'm going to take this whole menagerie over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this one, flip it open, and then sew this one. And I'm going to do that for all 16 blocks, and then we're going to press and we're going to have all of these green leaf sections finished. Okay, so just for clarity, oops, I'm going to jump the whole thing over. Look at that. Okay, so just for clarity, I did rotate my design board 90 degrees. So I'm going to start with my left hand and my middle. That's the way I always like to start. So my left hand and my middle, and this is the outer corner, and this is the outer corner. And I'm going to just nest those seams, and then I'm going to send them through. Now, if you're concerned about it, you could make one block, stop, do the next piece. Here, we'll do that once. Whoops. I don't want you to flip up. So if you're concerned about it, then you send one through, open it up, grab your next piece, bring it over. So you should have your 4 patches opposite, nest it, and send it through. And I'm kind of pushing, you probably can't see that on camera, I'm pushing this top layer to make the greens really nest together. So there's a little bit of extra fabric on the top, just a tiny bit. So after I get past this nested seam, and I'm going to feel that, make sure it's still nested, then I've got a little bit of a bulge here. And what I'm going to do is after this seam gets through the machine and is past the needle, then I'm just going to kind of hold the fabric a little bit by pressing down, and it's going to kind of stretch that out. But I don't want to do it before I get to this nested part at the top. So now I'm past that first nested seam, and I'm going to re-nest this one, and I'm going to just hold these 2 layers under pressure with my index finger, and it just pulls it right together. If you have a big section like that, you're going to create a ripple. But if you don't have a big section, then you're going to create nice seams. Okay, so that's one. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would piece all of these together. I would grab my middle row and my top row and do all of these, and then come back and open them all up and add the last row. So I'm past that first seam, so now I'm going to nest this second seam. And if it's a little bit longer on the bottom or the top, you can probably make it work. You don't want to stretch too far, but and when I'm chain piecing like this, I want to go off the edge, like probably by the width of the presser foot, so that between each piece I have a little bit of room to work with. When I pull them back through, you'll see why. Okay, so that's all 16 of the first seam. Whoops, I forgot. Okay, so I'm just going to pull those back through, and then I'm going to fold it open, grab my next stack. So now on this one, the 4 patch is going to be on the top. That's the only difference. I'm going to sew this entire section together again. Okay, so we're going to take all of these over to the pressing station, and we are going to press towards the middle. So away from all of our 4 patches,
And then we've got the green part ready to go. Okay, guys, I just had to come back and record this because as I was pressing, I noticed on this one, I drooped a little bit here and a little bit here. And, at the end of the day, it's probably fine in a quilt. But I was thinking to myself as I was getting ready to rip it, like, you will never regret just fixing it. So, why I don't have to have like the perfect quilt at all. Sometimes it's worth it just to take a step, rip a quick seam, admit that you were rushing, Kelly. And I know I plow through things a lot, but there is a time and a place for imperfections, and there's a time and a place that's just too much. So, uh, the other thing I like about this 60 weight thread is that it rips pretty easily. If you've got a nice sharp seam ripper, it is pretty painless. Now, as I put this back together, I'm not sure why this one went sideways, but I am going to pin it just to give myself some additional guidelines. Because maybe I cut this one wrong, whatever. But I want them to nest. I would like for you to nest, please. Pretty please. And I do manipulate my fabrics a lot with my hands. So, but there is a really good example. Oh my gosh, look what I did. That one's in there wrong anyways. You guys. See? Perfect learning example. All right, let's try that again. You guys probably saw that before I did, didn't you? Well, that's the beauty of sewing is that it's really easy to switch it back. Yeah, because this one should have been down there. Goodness. Well, this is just a show. Everybody is going to have a seam ripper for good reason because you need to pull seams sometimes. Okay, so that's how I want it to end up. We'll restitch it. All right, I'm going to be super lazy, do a thumbnail press here because this is my last block. It will go there. No, it will not. It will go there. Let's see, how many times can I mess up this one little line patch here? I mean, several, apparently. And now my seams are starting to kind of pull a little bit just because I've ripped so many there and it's wanting to move. So I'm going to throw an extra pin in it. So I can use pins when I need to. Oh, I'm threading my needle. So that's once in this entire process since I started using the new method. Okay, so much better. And our patch is in the right spot now. So even an extra save. Okay, now that we have all of our 9 patches made, we're going to go ahead and make the rest of our petal. So I'm going to do these kind of one block, and then after you've made one block, then we'll go through and chain piece the rest of them. So let's take a look. First things first, I'm going to take these 2 petal pieces and I'm going to add the white corners to them. So we're going to start off with our piece F. I'm sorry, F.
and A, and we're going to head over to the machine and we're going to sew those together. Okay, so basically we are going to do 2 corners on the same side. It doesn't matter which one you do first, but we're just going to sew from one corner to the next corner. Let me go ahead and switch my presser foot. I want to use that guided foot when I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam, but not if I'm trying to sew across a corner like that. So we're going to sew 1 line on each block. And you can chain piece these. That's how I'm going to do mine. And I'm going to do all of 1 block first. So for these bigger ones, we're going to have 4 pieces of the color. And then I'm going to go trim all of these up, press them open, and then we'll come back and do the other. So today's going to be kind of one of those days where we go back and forth between the ironing board and the cutting table. So I'm just going to trim all 4 of these at the same time. They don't have to be super perfect. You've already sewn the seam. And on this project, I just decided I had too many irons in the fire to deal with those triangles. Sometimes I like to make a cool extra border, but that's just not what I did this time. So now we're going to press all of these to the white side. And then I'll put them under the clapper for just a minute, and we'll come back and do the other side. Okay, so we've already got the 1 corner sewn, and we're going to come back and just do this other side, the exact same thing. So if you'd like to mark these from corner to corner so you know exactly where you're sewing, please feel free. I'm just using this center line on my machine to help me line up. So I'm going to put the first corner right in the middle of my toe, and then I'm lining up this corner with the red line. Okay, so here we did the same thing. I just pressed them towards the white side and then cut them all apart and trim them up. We'll put them under the clapper while we work on the next piece. So now we have piece H and piece B. And these are going to be a little bit easier because we can do both corners without having to stop and press and cut between. So we'll run them through once and then do the other side. So again, I'm using this seam, red line, and then we'll just pull them back through and do the other side. Now we'll go cut and press these open. Okay, so I do like to leave mine kind of chain pieced because it makes it pretty easy to trim them. So I'm just going to line up with that 1/4 inch line, make sure I'm leaving enough of a seam allowance. It might need a slight adjustment, but it's usually pretty close. And then I'll cut them apart after I trim them all up. That's going to take forever. I just love these little desktop ones because you can kind of be a little bit more less precise, and it does the job just fine. Okay. Too many things over here. So I'll move my petals to the side, the big petals, and these are going to be our smaller ones. So I'm just going to press away from the white. Actually, I'm going to press towards the white. Sorry. I'm used to saying press away from the white. All right. We'll let those set up under a clapper for just a second, and we will work on our next part of our big petals. So what I like to do for these is kind of pretend that I'm building my block out. So I have one petal going each direction. Then I'm going to have this piece in the center, and I'm going to have these attached to each side. So I'm going to send these three together, and then I'm going to send those two together. So first I'm going to take one of my big ones and one of my large petals. Got thread stuck to it from where I starched. Okay, so we'll send that through, and I'm going to switch to my seam guided foot now because all of the rest of my seams are going to be just a regular 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to get one with the smaller piece of my yellow center. And on these yellow centers, I did decide to go ahead and cut that last fat 1/4 that came in our bundle, and it wasn't quite enough to do all of them. So I found this in my stash, and I made 4 pieces out of this, and then the rest of them are the fat 1/4 that came in our kit this month. So this fabric is the one that came in our kit this month. So I'm going to take the other side of this. So it's going to be 2 big petals and 1 big strip all sewn together. And then I'm going to get my last piece with my center yellow. And then we'll go press all of them. Okay, so these guys are finished. I'll put them back on the sewing machine, ready for their next step. And then we're going to press these towards the dark side, away from our yellow. This one we're going to press away from our yellow. And I'll throw these under the clapper for a second. All right, let's head back over to the machine. Okay, so now we've got our piece Ds that we're going to attach, and I like to set those just like the picture. And this is one of those that the picture shows it exactly like this. Obviously, I'm not going to sew it like that. So once I get it oriented the right way, then I'm going to set it on my machine the way I want to push them through. So I know I'm going to want to pick the right-hand side up, flip it over onto my square, and sew it together. We'll move these over to our design board. We'll give these guys a quick press. And then we'll cut them apart and add the last block here. Now we've got our D block up and our flower petal diagonal this way, and C is going to be attached next. So this is how I want to send them through. So I'm just going to flip them over and sew them together. We'll do that for all 3 pieces. You can pin these if you would like. So then we'll press these towards the white as well. Of course, they won't all fit on my little ironing board. So now we have all of our little pieces made. I'm going to set my petal down the center on the right and the left. My 9 patch is going to go here at the bottom. And then we're going to have one of these littler petals all the way around. So the next thing we're going to do is sew these 3 pieces together and these 3 pieces together. And then we'll hit this middle and we'll be done with this block. So one of the great things about this block is there's not just a ton of points that need to match. So it really makes it kind of fast and easy to sew. So I know I'm going to have my 9 patch with the 4 patches towards the middle. Okay, that's ready to press. Now we'll do the other side. So that's my top block. This is my second. And then there's going to be my bottom. Okay, we'll go press. Okay, so now we've got our 2 outside pieces ready to press. I'm going to just press towards this center petal because there are fewer seams there. I feel like the instructions said to press open, but I just got lazy. So set my seam, and then I like to press from the back. Okay, so now we're just going to put these 2 pieces on our design board. Make sure I've got everything. All my petals are going to the outside. It's easy to get one of those turned if you attach this longer piece to the wrong side of your midsection. So be warned, if you see one that's wonky, that's probably what happened. And then we're just going to sew these last 2 seams. Okay, so I have my left hand and my middle. I'm going to put those together. Now, because this is a longer run, I am going to throw a pin or 2 in it. Nothing major. I don't have any big seams that need to align. I just want to kind of hold it to the right place. Okay, we'll swing around and do the other side. Okay, so now we will take this over to the pressing station and press it, and our block is done. Okay, so we'll set our seams. And I'm just going to press these towards the middle because there's less going on there. Then I'll set a clapper on this and let it really get good and flat, and then I'll get it up on the design wall for us. On that, once you finish your first block and you know what you're doing and you feel comfortable with it, then I would go ahead and build out all of your blocks. So I've gone ahead and stacked up everything I'm going to need for each block in order. So this is my pink pattern, and then my blue sits right under it, and my blue's under it all the way around. So I can go through and do these 3 on each one and then iron them all and then come back and set them in. And my middles are already all sewn together and they're all in the same order that my other blocks are. So these 8 will go together like in a snap because I've already done all of the chain piecing for them. So after I make the first block, I usually like to, just tinker with it, make sure I understand the pattern and see where things might be difficult, and then come back and really kind of assembly line it.
Okay, guys, that's a wrap on this month's blocks. I actually am not going to be finishing this quilt in this video because can you believe it? I ran out of my Bella Solids. I mean, I buy this stuff by the bolt all the time. I thought I had another bolt in my closet and I ran out. So instead of making a sashing that is 1 inch wide, I'm going to wait and get my fabric in and do the 2 inch sashing. 2 inch sashing. Wow, that was hard. Like they have in the pattern. So you'll have your borders that you want to add and your sashing. If you'd like to see a video on that, I can definitely make it. It's just going to be a little bit later on. And I wanted to show you kind of my shortcut for making this 9 patch with something that was more strip piecing instead of cutting out all of those individual squares. So I hope that helped. If you like watching any of my tutorials or unboxing videos, it really does help a ton if you'll hit that like and subscribe. And I'd love to see you guys over on that private Facebook group, see what you're working on. Until then, I will see you guys next time.